Hello and welcome to the European Football Show's Europa League preview. In the build-up to the upcoming game week, we are dissecting each fixture with an assortment of guests from around the world. In today's clip, we look at Sevilla versus Dynamo Zagreb, one of several intriguing matchups awaiting us this upcoming Thursday. To go into depth on record further NHL record championship winners Dynamo Zagreb, I am joined by Ante Jukić, who is a participant on the National Curriculum Football Podcast, at TNC Football Podcast, and ESPN. Great to have you on the Europa League preview, Ante. First and foremost, can you, as a Croatian football expert, give us a lowdown on how you came to keep a close eye on Croatian football and what exactly actually happened in the last few days of the January transfer window where Mislav Orsic eventually ended up staying at Dinamo Zagreb despite interest from English Premier League side Burnley FC?
Well, it's first things first. It's thank you for having me. It's nice to be here. The thing about Croatian media is that you can really take nothing for certain, or have to take everything with a grain of salt. So the stories around the Ilicic deal, there's going to be a lot of hearsay or wood around the campfire, so to speak. The predominant story is that Orsic wanted to stay at Dinamo and that he was given enough to make it feasible to stay at Dinamo. At the end of the day, I'm not necessarily certain whether a move to Burnley is a feasible one from a career standpoint, unless you're trying to make that last payday that you want to cash in on. Burnley not in good shape at the moment in the Premier League, whereas Dinamo, will be playing European football basically every year. If you're at that late stage of your career, especially heading into a World Cup year, uh, this is my own theory, but I don't see playing at Burnley to be. I don't see playing at Burnley to be a very feasible one a feasible choice at that point in your career.
Insight there. And now let's move on to a look at Dinamo's season. Now, Modri, or the Blues, as they are commonly known, currently sit at the top of the Croatian League standings. Given Dinamo's domination domestic over the years, that might not surprise too many listeners. But what may is the fact that they are currently involved in a four-way title fight in the Perva NHL. In addition, Dinamo finished second in the UEFA Europa League group behind West Ham United, but ahead of both Rapid Vienna and KRC Genk. However, this looks to drop off from the brilliant group stage last season when they topped the group unbeaten, involving both Feyenoord Rotterdam and CSK Moscow. So, Ante, how has Dinamo's season gone so far overall, so far, in your opinion?
I think I think you have to look at this season in the context of all the others, and it's arguable at least to say that this is probably the worst Dinamo side in years. When you look at the ones that made the Champions League, when you look at the Dinamo side that went on a deep run last season in the Europa League, I think this is one of much lesser quality from an overall standpoint, or from a standpoint of collective balance. This season, without the likes of Lovro Majer and Christian Jakic, who have taken like ducks to water in the top five leagues this season, I think this is a much lesser team. And initially, Damir Krznar's adjustment in relation to that, his inability to do that, and then bringing in Korpic as well, I think it's been one of relative difficulty for Dinamo, because they've kind of been used to having things all their own way in the league, or domestically in Croatia. You could say that the gap has closed. Osijek, Rijeka, Hajduk are spending quite a bit more than they have usually in the past few years, especially as they swam with bankruptcy and earlier in this decade. But Dinamo, I think I think it was even evident very early in the season. They played Rijeka at home and played out a 3-3 draw. It was the first time that Krasnodar went with Luka Ivanušec, Majer and Jakic in midfield, and they played really great football but didn't win. And so from there, Krasnodar kind of grew increasingly conservative. And so you go into the Sheriff Tiraspol game. You played Josip Misic at the base of midfield, Jakic as an 8, and it didn't really seem to function. So from there, they sold Jakic and Majer, and Dinamo have kind of been treading water in that respect. They only really affirm their place in the knockout stages of the Europa League once they beat a second string West Ham team in London. And it was from there actually. It was in that game specifically that Korpic shifted to a 3-5-2 and put Ivan Ušec in midfield, where Krznad had been trying unconventional things or throwing the proverbial at the wall when things weren't working, like playing Bruno Petkovic as a 10. I think playing Ivan Ušec in midfield makes them marginally better. But the question of net gain, given the relation of everything that's happened this season, is still an uncertain one, both on a domestic and continental level.
That's great stuff. That's great stuff. So let's come on to Dinamo Zagreb specifically then. What do you think are the strengths and weaknesses of this side, in your opinion, going into their match against Sevilla in the Europa League knockout playoff round?
Yeah, probably as a tangential element to that last question, the strongest element they had last season, and was probably the most, why it was, let's say, them knocking out Tottenham last season in the Europa League, that was why it probably wasn't as much of a surprise, because Dinamo's midfield play for player was probably stronger than Tottenham's. And it was the strongest element of Dinamo's play last season, the fact that they did have a midfield that was so flexible, both in defensive and attacking senses. They had players with really great positioning, and Ivan Ušec and Petkovic kind of working off that. They had really good balance off the basis of what their midfield provided. And now it's probably their weakest aspect, whereas you do have Ademi has to kind of do more than what he had to do last season. Whereas Ademi was primarily there in midfield to provide late entries into the penalty area, work as a complement in duels, and the likes of Jakić, Amajed, and Ivan Ušec drifting in, and Petkovic as well could do a lot of the heavy lifting in combination and build-up play, whereas Ademi's had to take on more of a responsibility in that regard, and he's not necessarily compatible to that. Mišić being signed from Sporting Lisbon this season hasn't really worked out at base of midfield, especially in comparison to Jakić, who's played quite well at Eintracht Frankfurt this season, he's adapted rather quickly. And it's only until before the winter break did Ivan Ušec kind of come into midfield. He played predominantly as a right winger in either a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3 with Petkovic or Kondan Andrić, and then you'd have Oršić on the left wing. So probably the strongest aspect of Dinamo last season is now arguably the weakest, irrespective of Ivan Ušec coming into midfield now playing in a 3-5-2 under Korpic. You'll still likely have Petkovic and Oršić up front. On the weekend against this, so they played with Andrić and Oršić in that 3-5-2. It wasn't the most functional of it's not the most functional of teams, especially in comparison to what we have seen from Dinamo in the past few years domestically, and when there has been quite a sizable gap between Dinamo and the rest. But I think because of that lack of balance, that's why the gap has closed domestically. And against the Sevilla side, who can be rather fluctuating in terms of their abilities with respect to the lineup and with respect to their midfield, it'll be interesting to see how Dinamo fares in comparison to that.
That's great to hear. That's fantastic. Yeah, it's almost like last season I remember watching Dinamo against CSKA, obviously, and I remember watching them in the group stage against CSKA because I watched quite a lot of Russian football, and it was interesting how pre-group a lot of people probably were talking of Feyenoord and CSKA being the two favourites for that group, but then Dinamo just completely turned everything on its head, went unbeaten, were absolutely amazing in that group stage, and then obviously that brilliant comeback against Tottenham. Like after the first leg, I gave them absolutely no chance whatsoever, even though it was at the Maximir. And then when I saw the goals coming in, I was watching AC Milan versus Manchester United, and when I saw the goals coming in, I thought, wow, no, this is insane. And I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw that final score. So, Dinamo Zagreb, yes, they're still definitely a side in Europe who, because they qualify all the time, frequently through the league, they definitely are a side who absolutely have to be respected when they get to the knockout rounds. I remember them going to the latter stages of the Europa League a few years ago, and I think Benfica under João Felix in their lineup put them out. So they are normally used now to getting through to the latter knockout rounds of European competition. There's certainly a side that should be respected. So yeah, there's some brilliant insight there from Ante. And one last question before we wrap it up. This Dynamo Zagreb part of the BTL Europa League special, Ante. I'd like you to give me a prediction for the Sevilla versus Dynamo Zagreb Europa League match, please.
I'm not big on definitive predictions because football is a very chaotic sport. But I will say that Sevilla get through within the 180 minutes. I think it'll be rather routine, depending on who plays. So, as you could probably see in the Osasuna game, they can be quite volatile. But I think they'll get through. They'll get through with relative comfort against this Dynamo side.
Just want to say thank you very much, Ante, for all your insight into Dynamo Zagreb there. Yeah, it's a game I'm looking forward to seeing as someone who follows Spanish football a lot. I've been intrigued watching Sevilla all this year, and it does seem like they've dropped off a little bit in the chase for a La Liga title from Real Madrid. But yeah, there's still a side, and when you got a Europa League final on home soil, there's still a side that's got to be respected, and they'll be up there certainly. But yeah, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to Ante once again, and thank you for everybody. And yeah, that's the insight on Sevilla versus Dynamo Zagreb. So that was some fantastic insight there from Ante on the Dynamo Zagreb side. And now we move to Spain to get the lowdown on record 6 times UEFA Europa League winners Sevilla FC. Rocky Blancos are chasing a 7th title and have the added carrot of this season's final being based in their very own Ramon Sanchez Pizjuan Stadium. So joining me to look at Sevilla's chances in the Europa League is Allan Feehely, editor of Football España at Football España, who also happens to be a Seville resident. So, Allan, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Sevilla currently lie 2nd place in La Liga. However, they failed to win in their last 2 games against both Celta de Vigo and Osasuna. Much has been made of Sevilla being in a title race this season in La Liga. However, given that they are now 6 points behind leaders Real Madrid, do you still believe that this is the case?
Yeah, I think it is. I think they definitely are. I mean, yes, they did not win the last 2 games, but they also didn't lose them. I mean, against Celta Vigo, they were 2-0 down. They came back to draw 2-2. And against Osasuna, they drew 2-0. But they missed a penalty in the last minute through Ivan Rakitic that would have taken them within just 1 point of Real Madrid at the time the game was played. Obviously, it's not ideal, but I think that there's a lot of football yet to be played. And Sevilla are the kind of team that don't buckle, they don't collapse. They will continue to play and perform and push themselves to stick the pace with Real Madrid. It's going to be very, very tough, of course. I mean, Madrid are very, very strong this season. I mean, Karim Benzema and Vinicius Junior, they're probably the 2 most attacking threats in the league. But they are very reliant on those 2 to score goals. I mean, against Granada on Sunday, Madrid they won 1-0 thanks to a Marco Asensio goal, but it was quite a close run thing. And without those 2 boys, to be fair, it's quite difficult for them to win games. And they have shown already this season that they can wobble sometimes. They're knocked out of the Copa del Rey by Athletic Club. And, they beat them in the Supercopa de España final for sure. But they also are involved in the Champions League this season. They're playing PSG in the last 16. So they have a couple of things in the go at the moment. And while they're very strong, they're not infallible. They aren't, a juggernaut of a team. They can be beaten. They can be gotten at. And even when Sevilla played them earlier in the season, Sevilla actually outplayed them. But I still would back Madrid to win the title. I think it's their title to lose. I think they're the best team in La Liga and they have the best players. But they do come to the Sanchez Pizjuan in the end of April. And that would be a huge game because if Sevilla within touching distance around that period and they can beat them, then who knows what could happen because things can change towards the final weeks of the season. The only caveat is that Madrid customarily tend to, finish quite strongly. I remember the season they came back and they won the last 10 games, I think it was in a row, and took the title from Barcelona. Sergio Ramos was integral to that title win. He's obviously not here anymore. But the only thing as well is that back in 2014, 2015, there was a similar precedent to this season because it was Ancelotti again in charge. They started very well. There wasn't much rotation. And then towards the end of the season, injuries and tiredness got to them and Barcelona won the title in the end. So that's the only thing that Sevilla can point to. But I think there's definitely in the title race. It's going to be very, very difficult for them, but they're still in for sure.
Yeah, it's an incredible achievement, I think, for Sevilla to be where they are at the moment. It must be stressed being ahead of both FC Barcelona and Atletico Madrid in the table. And, with my neutral hat on, I'd absolutely love them to win a first La Liga title since 1945-46. Yeah, as I say, I probably would agree with that. I don't think they're out of the title race just yet at all. And like I said, Real Madrid, they could easily slip up in the next few weeks. It's very, very possible this season in La Liga. Now, despite the brilliant La Liga season so far, Sevilla's Champions League campaign, you could say, was a little bit of a disappointment. Third place finish in a group which, when it was drawn, it did look very, very winnable. Wolfsburg, Salzburg, and Lille. And, this third place finish ended up dropping them into the Europa League. So, Alan, what will be Sevilla's priority competition, do you think, going forward? Do you think it will be La Liga or the Europa League? Or do you think Sevilla has the depth squad capable of juggling both competitions?
I think it's La Liga. It's La Liga. I remember being at Sevilla Getafe a few weeks ago, and at the end of the game, the players at the lap of the stadium and the whole crowd were chanting La Liga, La Liga, La Liga in unison. And that's their priority. I know a lot of commentators and pundits have joked that, Sevilla are delighted to be back in the Europa League. Their priority is to get to the final Sanchez Pizjuan. It's absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. The Champions League is where it's at. That's what they want it to be. I spoke with Monchi maybe, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and he was kind of saying the first thing is always the Champions League. That's what we want to be in. But now that they're in the Europa League, they're going to fight to win that. But La Liga is a priority because they've won 6 Europa League titles in the last 2 decades. Um, they've not won the league title for nigh on 70 years, you alluded to earlier. And the league title is where it's at because this is a unique opportunity for Sevilla, given how poor Atletico are, how undercooked Barcelona are as well, how relatively, unintimidating Madrid are. They are gettable. They are a very good team, but they're gettable. They're not the Galacticos of recent times, the 4-time Champions League winners, that kind of thing. So it's a unique opportunity for Sevilla, and winning a league title will give you a certain gravitas that they have not had for a long, long time. And at the end of the day, the Europa League is the second tier European competition. And I think that, as someone who wants the club to do well, wants the city of Seville to be well represented, I would rather than go deep in the Champions League than to be winning the Europa League. I think the way they dealt with that group was terrible. They really should have done much better in that group. Finishing third was a disgrace, to be honest. I mean, the team they have, the players they have, the catalogue of achievements they have in recent years, back to back top four finishes, the Europa League win in 2020. They should have been pushing to win that group quite comfortably. They were the best team in the group, in my opinion, and going deep into the competition. It didn't happen during the Europa League now, and their attention was switched to that. But I'm someone who believes that winning begets winning. I think winning breeds winning. And I think that it's a mistake to prioritize one competition over the other. But if they were going to, I think it would be La Liga. But I think that ending up in a knockout competition, so it's better for Sevilla, in my opinion, to be winning each game and progressing further than maybe going under strength in the Europa League and getting knocked out. I think that would be damaging to momentum and morale. So for me, I think they'll be taking both competitions equally seriously, but their priority is definitely La Liga because winning the Europa League for the seventh time would be brilliant, but winning La Liga would be unforgettable. It would be a legendary moment in their history. So yeah, who knows what will happen, but I think they'd be quite focused on both of them.
I saw so many jokes and memes on Twitter after they finished third in the Champions League group, and it's like, oh come on, they've done that on purpose. They got the final at the Sanchez Pizjuan at the end of the season. Come on, it's almost what they're doing. They want number 7 of the Europa League. They want the 7th Europa League title. But no, I'm kind of with you on that, Alan. I think as well that both competitions they should target, but obviously La Liga is something that they've never won, and like you said, they might not get a better chance than this going forward. Even though I do think this is arguably the deepest and strongest squad that they've probably ever had in their history, and it's very reminiscent of the time around 2006-07 time when they went in 3 competitions all at once, and they probably would have won La Liga had they not prioritised one of the Copa del Rey or Europa League, which they ended up winning. But yeah, there's just some great insight there, Alan. Thank you very much for that. And now we should focus to the immediate. Obviously, we're thinking way down the line there, but talking about Europa League finals and potential La Liga title. But let's switch focus to the immediate right now. Sevilla's first leg matchup against Dynamo Zagreb. That's what we're going to be focusing on in the immediate. In the immediate term, what do you see as the strengths and weaknesses of this Sevilla side?
Well, the strengths that they win games. They can win games without playing well. They're a results team who play results football, and when they're getting results, that's fine. Their weaknesses are basically that they don't play very well very often. They sometimes struggle to score goals. Ever since Ever Banega left in the summer of 2020, they haven't had that creative link in midfield who can kind of change games and create things out of nothing. So that's a loss for sure. And it's just mainly their lack of attacking incision. I mean, they can dominate games and control games, but not dominate them in the way that the top teams do. They can't create chance after chance, and even against Osasuna at the weekend, if they had got that late winner from penalty, it would have been probably undeserved because they didn't really do enough to win the game. It's kind of a funny balance because Julian Lopetegui has done so well at Sevilla, but he hasn't built a team that plays the attractive football, even that Real Betis do across the city, who are playing scintillating football this season. So, yeah, but I mean, also the city of Seville kind of prides itself on attractive football. They love the idea that the teams play attractive, aggressive, winning football. And Sevilla don't really play that way, but they're getting results. But as long as they're getting results, that's fine. But if the results drop, and they have been in recent times, they've been playing very well recently and have dropped a couple of points recently, and obviously the Champions League campaign, that's when the pressure comes on a little bit. So I would say the strengths of Sevilla are that they're a team that can win games. They're a competitive team. They don't lose often. They're hard to beat. They're very competitive in every aspect of the game, and they know how to get results when they maybe don't deserve them. And the weaknesses are they don't play performance football, scintillating football that gets people off their seats, that inspires people that there's a project in occurrence at the moment, which is what a lot of football fans want. But the way Sevilla are getting results at the moment, this season and the past couple of years, it's irrelevant. But if things go wrong, that's when things could go a bit pear-shaped, you could say.
Lovely stuff. Yeah, I'd probably share that. Yeah, sometimes probably you could say they lack a bit of a killer edge as a weakness. Sometimes they get a goal up in a game, but then don't kill it off. They don't get 2 goals up. They don't get 3 goals up. That's probably, the scoreline doesn't reflect their dominance. That's probably one observation I've had of watching Sevilla recently. Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. So yeah, lovely stuff. One last question, Alan. I'd like you to give me a match prediction for the Sevilla versus Dynamo Zagreb tie over the 2 legs.
I think they'll draw the first leg in Seville and then win the second leg in Croatia. I think it'll be a tough game for sure. They're a tough opponent, but I'd fancy them to get through. But I don't think it'll be convincing. I think that'll be quite a grind, to be honest. I mean, the way Sevilla are playing at the moment, they're finding it hard to beat anybody, really, But I think they have enough quality. Hopefully, Anthony Martial will click into gear by then. The Moroccan lads who just come back from the African Cup of Nations are integral, especially Bono and Youssef Naziri. So I think that, with a bit of time, by the time the first leg rolls around next Thursday, they'll be in a good kind of rhythm, a good mood, and they'll be able to put something together. But I think it will go down to the second game. I don't think it'll be finished in the first game. I think they'll go to Croatia and win it there. That's my prediction.
That's great. Alan, thank you so much for your time tonight. And that's all, folks. That is the preview for Sevilla versus Dynamo Zagreb in Breaking the Lines' Europa League special.